Why is it that people are so obsessed with blue flowers, glowing and unlike anything he's ever seen before? Phalaenopsis Blue Gene is transgenic. This is one of the bluest orchids I own, the true star of this video. Hello everybody and welcome to Plantivalo. Today with a very special video because almost all of my blue Phalaenopsis orchids are flowering at the same time, and I think this has never happened before, so I thought I had to make a video about all of them. And I'm pretty sure you saw some blue orchids before in some flower shops or in the garden center, but I'm pretty sure that they were not these ones. They were probably all colored, standard white or pink Phalaenopsis, and you can easily spot them by those little insertion spots which are oftentimes at the flower stalk, somewhere around the base of the flower stalk, and then you can see a little hole and then some blue coloration. Yeah, what they basically do is they just insert some blue coloration which is then transported up to the flower stalk and then to the flowers, and then they just get colored into a blue hue. And oftentimes the colors look quite artificial. They use oftentimes white Phalaenopsis, sometimes pink Phalaenopsis to get some color gradient, and the coloration is oftentimes not very even. You can see that the xylem in the flowers is colored more intensely, which makes much more sense because this is where the color comes from the flower stalk and then gets spread out into the flower. So you will end up with a color gradient in the flower. And I think the worst part about this is that they are meant to be thrown away after they are done blooming, because after the flower stalk is spent and the flowers fall off, the next flowering cycle will just be in the natural coloration of the Phalaenopsis flower. But why is it that people are so obsessed with blue flowers? I asked myself when I was thinking about this video. So basically people have been obsessed with blue flowers for thousands of years, but when exactly did this all start? So the earliest mention of a blue flower is from ancient Egypt, where the blue water lily Nymphaea caerulea,
not just blue, it's not turquoise, it's not lapis, it's actually cerulean,
was depicted all over ancient Egypt. However, this plant was probably depicted because of its psychoactive properties and not because of its striking beauty alone, but this is just some speculation on my side. Now in the Middle Ages, somewhere around the 12th century onward, the Virgin Mary was increasingly depicted in blue robes, and it was at that time that the blue pigment was created using lapis lazuli, which is a gemstone, and this made this blue coloration intensely expensive. And because of this depiction of the Virgin Mary in those blue robes, the color blue was started to be associated with purity, heaven, faithfulness, and the divine. And in 1802, the writer Novalis published the novel Heinrich von Oferterdingen, where the protagonist Heinrich dreams of a blue flower. He sees the blue flower glowing and unlike anything he's ever seen before in his dream, and he describes it feeling it was more real than reality itself. However, when he tries to reach this blue mysterious flower, it disappears. So from this moment on, blue flowers were unanimous with longing and for the unattainable, the unity of nature and spirit, and endless curiosity and discovery. In the 1930s and 1940s, researchers were asking themselves what was causing the blue pigment in blue flowers. So that's when the anthocyanins were discovered and characterized, where pelargonidin was described as having a red and orange tint, and cyanidin had a red-purple hue, whereas delphinidin had the blue-violet potential. However, they also discovered that structural differences of these cyanidins were also responsible for their final color. In the 1980s, the flavonoid 3,5-hydroxylase, or short F35H, was discovered, and this enzyme enables plants to produce delphinidin, which is the pigment required for true blue flowers. Now, in the late 1990s, scientists began engineering blue flowers, and the main strategy was introducing this F35H gene into the flower. Furthermore, they were trying to also suppress other pathways that would yield other pigments. In the end, they yielded more delphinidin, which was responsible for the true blue coloration that the researchers wanted. However, the plants always turned out violet or with a lavender hue, but never truly blue. Now, the problem with this attempt is that delphinidin is only the first step into creating blue flowers. The problem is that there must be enough of the F35H enzyme to produce enough delphinidin to outcompete the other pigments. Furthermore, the vacuole of the flower needs to be at the exact right pH to yield the blue coloration. If the vacuole is too acidic, the delphinidin can go into the purple direction instead of the true blue coloration. Furthermore, co-pigments like flavonols and flavones are needed to stabilize the blue delphinidin and intensify its color. Now, depending on the flowers, some flowers also depend on the acetylation of delphinidin for the blue coloration. On the other hand, other flowers depend on metal ions to stabilize delphinidin and to yield the blue coloration. I think the best example would be blue hydrangeas, which use aluminum ions to create the blue coloration. So in 2003 was the first attempt in creating a blue petunia, but it turned out more or less purple. There were some purple blue stripes on this petunia, but it was never the blue coloration that was anticipated by the researchers. Now fast forward to 2022, where the Phalaenopsis Blue Gene was created. Now, the Phalaenopsis Blue Gene has an intense amount of the pigment delphinidin, but if you look at pictures and especially some videos, you can also see that it is quite a blue orchid. However, it also tends to be more purple, and I haven't seen it myself in person, so I cannot tell you exactly how it looks like. And I'm pretty sure colors also look very different from person to person. But the common opinion seems to be that Phalaenopsis Blue Gene is more purple than truly blue. But I am really excited to see if I can find Phalaenopsis Blue Gene in Japan, because this is where this orchid was bred and is currently sold exclusively. So I think the best chance to see this Phalaenopsis is in Japan. The problem with Phalaenopsis Blue Gene is it is a transgenic orchid, so it is not allowed to be sold in Europe anytime soon. So unfortunately, I won't be able to get this orchid at all. But how cool would this be to see this orchid in person at least once? But in the meantime, I collected some blue orchids. Some of them are more blue than others, and I am pretty pleased with my little collection. And for the first time, they are blooming more or less at the same time, and this is a really special moment for me because I can showcase all of my blue orchids at once and show you guys what I have. Now, one of the first Phalaenopsis orchids that I got, actually this was a gift from my fiance, is this orchid right here, and this is Phalaenopsis Blue Martin. And I think this is one of the first hybrids that is really going into a very, very blue direction. Yes, it is a little bit lavender and it is a little bit purplish, but this is one of the bluest orchids I own. This is more of a light blue coloration, but it is, I would say, remarkably blue for just some breeding efforts. It's just so beautiful. And it has a very faint scent, which is more intense in the morning, but right now in the evening it is almost not noticeable, but that is not so important because the flowers are just so pretty and very beautiful. I really love this orchid. Now, over the years I collected some more orchids, and I think the next in line was this one right here. This is Phalaenopsis Zhujiang Sapphire, and this is the peloric version. I also have the non-peloric version behind me, and I think I picked this up at the Dresdner Ostern several years ago, and this is a very prolific grower and prolific bloomer for me. This is a very thirsty plant. It likes a lot of water and also nutrients and does not like to dry out at all. And this, I would say, is also going in a very blue direction. However, it is a little bit more purple compared to Phalaenopsis Blue Martin, but it is also very blue and very beautiful, especially the peloric version, which looks very symmetrical and very beautiful. What I also picked up at some point at the Dresdner Ostern, I think 2 years ago, was this Phalaenopsis tetraspis, and I think it's called blue-gray, and I think you can tell why, because this is going into a very grayish direction. And actually this flower looks more or less very different depending on the temperature. Right now in the summer it is going in a very gray direction. Sometimes it can be a little bit more purple, sometimes it can go a little bit into a bluer direction, but you can clearly see some blue-violet hints at the lip, and also the petals are very grayish, so there is definitely some blue pigment present in this flower. Then came the, I would like to call them, new generation blue Phalaenopsis hybrids. I think these were on my Christmas wish list, I think 2 years ago or something like that. They were all very young seedlings, and my fiance gifted me them for Christmas, and I think they are all from the same purchase. So let's start with this one right here, which is Phalaenopsis Sus Glad Kid Blue. And this is a very beautiful tiny flowered blue Phalaenopsis. The petals are very white with a teeny tiny little hint of blue, which is more pronounced on the lower petals. There you can see some blue dots, which are very cute, and then the lip is very intensely dark blue. It can be interpreted as violet, but I would say it's very blue to dark purple. And flowering for the first time this year is this beauty right here, which is Phalaenopsis equolacea. And this is also a very beautiful blue hue. This is also a very small flowered Phalaenopsis, and the petals tend to get very light to almost white at the tip of the petals, and the coloration is more or less very even throughout the flower. There is some distinct flowery scent to the flowers, but nothing too strong, but a very beautiful flower, I would say. Also flowering for the first time is this Phalaenopsis called Phalaenopsis Liuline Blue Star LM225. Also quite fragrant, and what I really love about this flower is that it has a very leopardy print to it. It also has the tendency of getting very white at the tip of the petals, but this leopardy print is very beautiful. It's a little bit more on the purplish side, but still very blue, and the coloration is more intense when the flower opens. I think you can see it in the flower bud that the coloration is very intense. Now, last but not least, because this is the true star of this video, is this Phalaenopsis right here, and every time I look at this Phalaenopsis, I'm very, very amazed by its beauty, because this is the most intense coloration I have seen on a Phalaenopsis, and this is Phalaenopsis Gephon GGGW1817, and this is just a very, very intense purple coloration. When the flowers open, they are leaning more into blue, and I think this is the bluest orchid that I own, because there is just so much pigment in this flower that this is just insane. It's just looking so beautiful, so amazing. And when I tell you that this Phalaenopsis is fragrant, it is fragrant the whole day, and it smells very much like lilies. It's very reminiscent of lilies. It's just so intensely fragrant. I really love this Phalaenopsis. I mean, who needs a Phalaenopsis Blue Gene if you can have this Phalaenopsis, because it's just so beautiful and it makes me so happy. The scent alone is just so beautiful, but paired with this coloration, it's just the most amazing blue Phalaenopsis. But what about you? Which one of these blue Phalaenopsis was your favorite, and which one do you think is the most blue of them all? Please tell me in the comments. Now, that was already it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye!